Tired, weakened, and heavily injured from his extensive battle against Gremmy, Kenpachi Zaraki is suddenly set upon by 4 ravenous vultures in the form of the Bambis, who attempt to take advantage of his current situation and try and kill him once and for all. Theirs is an ambush that goes against the very tenets of what makes a Bleach battle. There's no honour involved, they are ganging up on an already weak opponent, and it seems to be a very bad situation all around for one of the series' most reputable captains, someone who is well known for his strength and endurance. And yet, for the first time ever in Bleach, it really looks as though Zaraki himself believes he might be finally at death's door, when suddenly someone comes raining down from the sky in order to save him, in a last-minute rescue very reminiscent of a situation turned on its head from the Arrancar arc. Considering the first episode of our series Bleach The Best Scenes was looking at Ichigo during one of his absolute lowest points, I thought it was only fair to look at one of his most triumphant this time. Now, we are cheating somewhat with this particular scene, as calling it a scene is being a little generous, as this particular moment, this particular sequence, actually spans 3 separate chapters. Those are 580, The Light, 581, The Hero 2, and 582, The Headless Star. However, considering that everything that takes place within this moment is all happening concurrently, I think we can get away with it. So yes, Ichigo arriving from the heavens itself to save Kenpachi Zaraki from almost certain death is the topic of this video, and it is a wonderful, amazing moment for our main character, a real shining beacon of development for him, that he can now stand shoulder to shoulder with one of his greatest rivals, with one of the biggest powerhouses of Soul Society itself. It honestly feels near effortless the way Kubo takes that scene from the Arrancar arc where Ichigo himself is nearly dead at the hands of Tesla's ruthless beatings, only to be saved by Kenpachi, as Kenpachi looms over him with a huge smile on his face and flip it on its head, bringing us to the present day where Zaraki is lying in a crater, burnt to a crisp, thinking to himself that actually maybe his time is finally up, only for Ichigo to arrive standing over him with a huge smile on his face. It is a lovely comparison to make, it's the obvious comparison to make, and it's also not the only reason this is one of the best scenes in the series. We actually need to begin with a little bit of context. The second Quincy invasion has entered its second half now, with the end of the massive titanic battle between Kenpachi and Gremmy. Things are starting to change, the war is in flux. And I love these scenes that are interspersed between the big tentpole battles, because these are the scenes that really make it feel like a real war. These are the scenes that, for example, the fake Karakura town never really had. I love seeing the shots of Omaida carrying the wounded Soifon and his sister and having to deal with a group of soldat just in some random alleyway somewhere. I love Shinji and Hinamori meeting up with him. I love seeing Rukia and Byakuya heading towards these lightning bolts that are shooting down from the sky. These are the moments that really make it feel like a full-scale battle, and of course the upcoming attack on Zaraki would create a nice focal point for the war. So Zaraki has just finished up a pretty difficult battle against the Sternritter Gremmy, not the hardest fight I would ever say he's had, but he is certainly injured. He is covered head to toe in burn marks, in scars, he's coughing up blood as he believes that Gremmy has managed to even injure some of his internal organs, but this isn't really anything that Zaraki hasn't experienced before, and certainly with a bit of healing, you imagine he'll be able to shake it off. Except suddenly, in this moment of rare vulnerability for Kenpachi Zaraki, he is ambushed by 4 extremely powerful Quincies known collectively as the Bambis. Don't forget, it's easy to underestimate these characters, I think, because we don't really see them do too much in the story, but the Bambis are all captain-level individuals, so right now, in this weakened state, Zaraki is suddenly coming up against 4 captains effectively at once, except these guys don't have a shred of honor and are only in this to kill him. So what makes this scene truly powerful, outside of the fact that it is a very nice subversion of that original moment in the Arrancar arc where Zaraki arrives in the nick of time to save Ichigo, for me at least, is the fact that we have never seen Zaraki in a situation like this before. Honestly, I can see that being a running trend with this series of videos, that a lot of them are moments for characters in the series that expose them to brand new circumstances, as that's often extremely exciting and enthralling to watch unfold. But not only is this a brutal moment for Zaraki himself, not only is this a near-death moment for Zaraki, it's bigger than that. It's a near-death moment for the 11th Division in general. I really love the way this scene portrays the 11th Division. We know them to be this group of warriors, almost thugs, in many ways criminals and ruffians, but we also know that they all harbour this great respect for their captain, and here we get to see it play out better than ever before. I have celebrated before the fact that this big battle actually involves foot soldiers. Again, unlike the Fate Karakura Town arc, that really helps it feel like an all-encompassing war. And this is another great example of that. The fact that Zaraki is being injured, the fact that his men are being killed, but other men, despite that, are trying to run to their captain's side, only to be murdered in the most gruesome of ways. But it's heartening in many ways to see the 11th Division never giving up the fight, never stopping even in the face of insurmountable odds, and trying to get to their captain in his most dire moment. I also love as well the fact that for such a fight-loving division, for a division that really puts strength ahead of everything, despite seeing Zaraki being beaten up before their very eyes, none of them stop to consider it weakness for a moment. They all just want to try and save him. Zaraki's also never really been put in a situation like this before. Actually, a situation like this doesn't come up too often in the world of Bleach. As I mentioned earlier, these villains, the Bambis, are completely without honor, and in many ways that makes them more efficient. Battles in Bleach tend to have codes of honor. They tend to be 1v1 duels. People don't tend to get involved, and that even occurs for the villains as well. But here, you see scrappy villains who just want to get the job done, and who want to, kind of reap the rewards for doing so. I like the fact that one thing I've always loved about the Vandenreich is the fact that they are so efficient as bad guys. It completely separates them from the Arankar, in my opinion. The fact that they have zeroed in on Kenpachi Zaraki as being, presumably at the moment at least, the strongest fighter on the side of the Shinigami, the strongest active fighter, and they know that if they gang up on him, they can probably defeat him, they can probably kill him, and by getting rid of him, the battle will definitely swing back towards the Vandenreich's favour. That sort of thing, that sort of pragmatic thinking that actually makes sense, is what actually makes these guys so devious and what makes them so terrifying. But this scene wouldn't be what it is without that ruthlessness from the Bambis. The moment Zaraki is getting back onto his feet, Candice is unleashing another tempestuous bolt of lightning upon him, and it really looks like he's completely out of options. It's interesting that he doesn't use Nozarashi in this moment, considering how much trouble he's in. It's interesting that Yachiru doesn't come to him in this moment, again, considering how much trouble he's in, when realistically, I don't think he is any closer to death in the battle against Gerard in that moment than he is here, and Yachiru comes to him then. I do wonder what that's all about. Maybe it's the fact that Yachiru has only just disappeared and Kenpachi's not ready to see her. I don't entirely know. But I do find it interesting that he doesn't even try to use his Shikai. What I think we're supposed to take from this, and obviously it's kind of difficult to depict it in manga form, is that he's being attacked so rapidly that he doesn't really have a chance to do anything. The Bambis are hitting him from every single angle, and it's basically just happening so fast that it's like a flurry of attacks, bearing in mind as well that Zaraki is already weakened and probably feeling a bit sluggish. One artistic point about this scene that I also think is really cool is that when Zaraki is being beaten up, Kubo chooses never to show his face until that moment where the realization dawns on him that this might be the moment he dies. And actually, speaking of that moment, that singular moment where Zaraki is lying there in that smoking pit and he says to himself, my body won't move. Is this it for me? I actually wish Kubo had lingered on that a little more, because it is such a major moment for a character like Zaraki. Before, thoughts of dying in battle have only really been fleeting fancies, nuisances at best. I feel like the closest he really comes is against Noitara when his neck is like split open at one point and he puts his hand to it and he says, okay, if I carry on like this, I might actually die. And at which point he just kills Noitara and the battle is over. It's never really a real concern. This is the first time I think that Zaraki has actually thought there is nothing I can do here, and it's the end of me. So it would have been nice for Kubo to have been able to linger on that just a little bit longer, but I appreciate that he obviously wanted Ichigo's arrival to be the cliffhanger, and so had to kind of get through this moment. It's a little bit of a shame, but I think it still carries the same weight nonetheless. You do have to wonder what else was going through Zaraki's mind at this point, remembering of course that he has been through so many battles in his life, it's basically all he's known. If he was ever going to die, I wonder how he wanted to go out. Noitara, for instance, always wanted to die on his feet before he hit the ground, and that is kind of what happens to him. And someone like Yamamoto has always preached that you should die standing up, and I wonder if Zaraki had any kind of thoughts on that as well. And you have to imagine that this is absolutely not how he would have wanted to have gone. But of course, before they could administer the final blow, Ichigo arrives in a burst of smoke in the shape of the substitute badge. One small character element I really like here as well is that the Bambis are super efficient when it comes to beating down Zaraki, pummeling him, getting him to this state, but I love the fact that when the moment comes to actually finish him off, their character flaws are revealed and hold them back from administering that final blow. They all start bickering among each other about who's actually going to do the deed, and I like that. That's a believable reason for why they wouldn't just kill him outright. A small thing here, but I actually remember really thinking and hoping that this wasn't Ichigo arriving. I was hoping, as ridiculous as this might sound, that this was Execution arriving, bearing in mind they had been teased as far back as 518, and I was just like, where are these characters? Are they ever going to show up? I was kind of imagining the different members of Execution taking on a different Bambi. I mean, who doesn't want to see Tsukishima versus Giselle? That would have been so awesome. But of course, it is Ichigo. And I absolutely love that kind of sensation of Reiatsu rippling throughout the Seirete as Ichigo comes hurtling down from the sky above. It is perhaps the most direct kind of allegory to him coming from heaven, descending to save them from this horrible fate. I do love it. I think it works really, really well. Kubo does some great art here where you see the clouds parting to reveal Seirete in its entirety, which is awesome. Just looks really, really cool. I love that there's even a comedic moment in here where Ichigo botches his landing. It's supposed to be like this ultra epic moment, but he crashes into a building instead and collapses out of it. But then Kubo masterfully takes that moment and, despite it lacking in any kind of seriousness, also uses it to show us just how far Ichigo has come, with him nearly instantly appearing behind the Bambis and them having no idea when he got there. That's a really subtly badass moment for Ichigo. And of course he is draped in the regal splendour of the royal realm. An absolutely amazing outfit design as far as I'm concerned, and again, one I wish he had kept for a little longer. And Kenpachi is of course looking really bad here. The whites of his eyes are showing. He is lying prostrate on the ground. He cannot move at all. He can barely even lift his arm. He can barely even turn his head to look at Ichigo. He is covered in blackened, charred burns. And it's pretty rough, but the two of them share a smile because Zaraki knows that he is being saved. He knows he is in good hands now. But I also wonder if there is an element of that passing the torch. You know, Zaraki has always kind of looked upon Ichigo really fondly, and I think this moment does really help to highlight their bond. Ichigo, of course, comes directly to Zaraki first, clearly noticing that his Reiatsu was almost completely extinguished, and so determines that he wants to save him above all else, which I think makes total sense. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, it's just a wonderful way of depicting Ichigo's growth, that he is now the one standing over the fallen warrior, able to save them in their moment of need. It is a total reverse of that scene in the Arrancar arc, and it's so powerful at showing you how far Ichigo has come that he can now stand shoulder to shoulder with Kenpachi. Remember, back in the Arrancar arc, when Byakuya said to Ichigo, you know, don't get above yourself, there is no one here that would need your help. He is kind of belittling Ichigo in that scenario, but it's Byakuya's way of pushing him to fulfill his duty in Karakura Town. But the point still stands that I don't think Byakuya said anything in jest there. I think he was deathly serious. Now this moment of Ichigo actually being needed to save Zaraki also comes on the back of Byakuya asking Ichigo for help to save the Soul Society, again in their most desperate hour. So the Thousand Year Blood War arc in many ways feels like such a victory lap for Ichigo, in that these powerful captains with whom he was such fierce rivals are now all needing to rely on him. But I do love this moment that they share. I love that Zaraki even acknowledges the fact that he can't believe he now needs Ichigo to save him, but he's smiling about it, he's not unhappy about the scene, because they are friends at the end of the day. These two characters are allies, they've grown together in many ways, they've been on a very similar journey, and it's so nice to see that kind of played out here. For his part in this, Ichigo, in my opinion, has virtually never looked more confident than he does now. And you'll know Ichigo, of course, his power fluctuates so greatly, and we as readers can kind of tell where he's at by how confident he is. Perhaps the only time he's looked more confident than this was when he arrived to battle Aizen. But it's not just confidence here. There's a carefree nature to Ichigo's approach, a big smirk on his face, the fact that he's cracking jokes almost with Kenpachi, asking him if he can stand up, and Zaraki's like, what are you talking about? But I love all that. Here, now that he's actually swooping in to save these extremely powerful characters, it's a great, and in my opinion, very well deserved moment for our main character. But that's it for this video, looking at one of Bleach's best scenes. This particular scene was suggested by the commenter Llama, so I really do appreciate you putting in that comment. I appreciate everyone for leaving their comments on that video as well. There are absolutely tons of scenes that people want me to look at, so let me know in the comments here as well what scene you'd like me to look at as well in the future as part of this series. Let me know what you think of this moment where Ichigo comes in to rescue Zaraki from near certain death, where he fights off the Bambis with virtually no effort whatsoever required. It's just a great moment. As far as I'm concerned, when you transition into the actual fight with Ichigo and the Bambis, that really is a new scene. But all of this surrounding Zaraki's defeat, his ambush, Ichigo coming in to save him, despite it spanning 3 chapters, it does feel like it all kind of happens at the same time. It all kind of coalesces into this one triumphant moment for Ichigo. Alright guys, but that's it for the video. Make sure to hit subscribe if you haven't done already. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up to support me and the channel. And if you want to take that support from me another step further, I do also have a Patreon as well. And as always, I just want to say an enormous thank you to everyone supporting me over there. I really do appreciate it. Alright guys, but until next time, I'll catch you later. And I'll see you then.